Today, I would like to take this opportunity to extend condolences to Elder Daniel Paul's family of Indian Brook in Savannah First Nation. Elder Paul was a well-respected Mi'kmaq social activist, historian, and author whose wisdom and foresight will continue to change the landscape of the history of Nova Scotia. His legacy is one that reiterates the importance of us telling our own stories, engaging in research in our community, and sharing through our own lens to contradict the deficit language often used to center our lived experiences. Through the work of this special edition of the HPJ, we will further acknowledge the histories, contributions, and legacies of the African Nova Scotian people and communities who have been here for over 400 years. Additionally, it will share research that expands into the African diaspora, broadening the understanding of the community at large. I hope the work that we do through this edition will be cause for pause and encourage time to reflect on the inequities caused by historic and ongoing violence against and oppression of Indigenous peoples, as well as the African Nova Scotian community and others who have been marginalized on this land. Our format today is that we have an in-person audience and present. Christy Stillwell, HPJ co-editor-in-chief, and myself will guide this session, as well as online audience and presenter Dr. Tari Ajadi, assistant professor at McGill University, joining us from Montreal. After the presentations, there will be time for the audience to ask questions. The Improving Black Health Outcomes Special Issue is a collaborative effort between the Health Outcomes of People of African Descent flagship project and the Healthy Population Journal, which will focus on highlighting Black health equity. Improving Black health outcomes is a special issue, is an outcome of the first International Black Health Conference. This conference was held in October of 2022 as the first of its kind in Canada, aimed to improve Black health outcomes across the African diaspora. The conference focused on informing a clinical practice, policy change, showcasing achievements, and highlighting promising practices. The Healthy Populations Journal is student-led, open access, peer-reviewed journal housed at the Healthy Populations Institute at Dalhousie University in Nova Scotia. Its aim is to reduce barriers to evidence dissemination, recognizing that knowledge can be shared in many ways and accepting a wide range of formats for publication. We encourage submissions from authors from a broad range of knowledge creators, including students, government, nonprofit organizations, and community members worldwide. A variety of submission types are accepted, and they'll be discussed in more detail later on in the presentation. But they include academic style articles, book reviews, storytelling, poetry, and infographics. The HPJ special edition guest editors include the folks that are on the screen. As mentioned, many of us are here today. Dr. Tari Ajadi, assistant professor at McGill University. Dr. Keisha Jeffries, neuroscientist in Nova Scotia, who will be joining us at Dow in the fall. Damiola Adulier is the David Naylor Fellowship at the University of Toronto. Coretta Isan is a master's candidate of Applied Health Services at St. Mary's University. And Chelsea States is a master's candidate and the faculty of health at Dalhousie University, and myself, Crystal Watson. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ajadi to share further details about this commission.
Thank you very much, Crystal, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to see some of your faces, at least on Zoom. As Crystal mentioned, I'm in Tiohtià:ke or Montreal, the traditional territory of a wealth of Indigenous nations, including but not limited to the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe. So today I'm just here to kind of take you through the various criteria and mechanisms, different ways that one could submit to the Health Populations Journal for our special issue. I'm just giving you a brief overview. If you do have any questions, I believe we will have a question and answer session, so I'm more than happy to address those at that time. So firstly, as you can see on the slide, just the kind of real high level points of what needs to be included when you submit whatever it is you're submitting, whether that's an academic article, whether that's an infographic, whether that's a commentary, or whether or not that's a piece of artwork, poetry, story, etc. So a cover letter. We want to know, broadly speaking, what it is that you're actually submitting. Just give us a little bit of context and understanding of what it is and how it's relevant to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and or the Health Populations Institute practice projects that's relevant to. So this is just a way to make sure that this work would really be applicable or resonate with other works in the special issue. So then there's also got to be some kind of reflection, research or creative on this work being relevant to Black health, right? And so we want the actual piece of work there to understand and how it relates specifically to the well-being of Black communities, for example, through the frame of the social or structural determinants of health, but it can be further afield than that particular lens. The submission must be original and not previously published, and if it involves other human beings, other people, then you must either have ethics review approval or exemption, and that should be clearly reported. All text should be double-spaced, 12-point font, and should adhere to the other stylistic and bibliographic requirements as outlined in the author guidelines, which are available on the Healthy Populations Journal website. And so crucially, this is something that's really important here, you must follow the blinding instructions that are on the Healthy Populations Journal website to make sure that we're able to not know who's actually submitting this when we send this out for peer review. And so if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to engage. Next slide, please. So the most obvious or kind of traditional method of engagement with the journal will be an academic style article. Here on this slide, we have a little screenshot of an article that myself, along with my colleague Julia Rogers, submitted to Healthy Populations Journal in its, I think, its very first inaugural issue. I believe that was the case. So for the academic style articles, there should be approximately 4,000 words. That's excluding figures, tables, references, and appendix, right? And so an encouragement here to reference broadly, particularly when we're talking about Black health, to make sure that we're acknowledging the contributions and insights of those that help to provide novel and original research in this context. So citation is really important here, and that's part of the reason why there's no word limit for the references. You must include a structured abstract, and so that should cover introduction, objectives, methods, results, and conclusion and discussion. That's about 250 words. And please submit as a Microsoft Word document. And so here, this is really a good opportunity, particularly for those of you that are maybe on the call that are grad students. But if you have a paper that you've been working on related to Black health, this is a really great opportunity to have a venue for that work and to work on that. Next slide, please. So another important way that you can participate in this special issue is to submit a commentary, right? And so commentaries are different than academic articles in the sense that they're kind of more strident and kind of a call to action, so to speak, as we can see here on the slide, that speaks broadly about, in this case, an issue related to Black health, but is kind of more of an essay style format as opposed to an article format. And so that's got to be about 1,000 words, excluding references, again, submitted as a Microsoft Word document. And all of the papers that are kind of screenshotted on the slide are available on the Healthy Populations Journal website, so you'll be able to check them out for a really kind of good understanding of form. But you know, this article by Emma Cameron and Dr. Keisha Jeffries, who was on the call, they speak forcefully to a contemporary issues that relates to a particular topic here, talking about anti-Black racism in Canadian education. In this journal, it would be a commentary perhaps on Black health that would be really helpful, or in this issue. Sorry, next slide. So book reviews, this is another really important way to kind of engage with the journal. So book reviews, as they sound, a way to just kind of scan and engage with research that is relevant to the issue at hand and that is already extant. And the reviews are really quite short, only about 500 words, excluding references. Again, submit as a Word document. And this is if you're a bit tentative, perhaps, about engaging in an academic article or a commentary, a book review is a good way to kind of get an entry point into kind of more formal academic writing. So please consider a book review. Next slide. So one of the really wonderful things about the Healthy Populations Journal is the fact that there's multiple ways to engage, both that are within the kind of traditional academic fora as of the kind of modes that I've just described, but also in really interesting, dynamic and creative ways, right? And so this is one of the ways that can happen. If you are a visual artist of any kind, then you can submit work to the Healthy Populations Journal to be included as kind of visual artwork or cover artwork for this particular issue. And so that's something that's really, I think, unique and profound. And so here we have a really awesome example of this by Lynette Peters. When you do submit visual artworks, please include 1 to 4 high-resolution images and just describe the artwork, right? Give us a kind of artist's blurb if you can. That would be about anywhere between 300 and 500 words, so approximately a page. And please submit that as a PDF document. Also, if you are a poet, if you are a storyteller, your work is valuable and could be really important to this journal. And we really encourage you to submit to this particular issue. So there are distinct submission criteria for poetry as opposed to stories. Poems have a maximum of about 500 words, whereas stories have a maximum of about 2,000 words. But please feel free to engage creatively with the special issue and with the idea of Black health and improving Black health outcomes if you do happen to be a poet or a storyteller. Finally, we have the capacity to submit infographics. And so this could be really useful if you work within the non-for-profit space, if you work within the government space, if you have knowledge to kind of mobilize, that would be really helpful. And so the infographics, please include an abstract. It's about 250 words and submit as a PDF document. But this is one way to kind of communicate really important and useful insights related to Black health that might be mobilized not only within the context of the journal, but more further afield. So this is something to consider. And please feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in engaging in an infographic, because we'd love to work with you on that as well. I see that there's something in the chat. Oh, sorry, one moment. So there's a question that asks in the submission of a book review, would the book have to be connected to Black health, or could the review itself comment on the book's relation or lack of relation to Black health? And that's a really great question. I actually think that it might be interesting, perhaps, to focus as much on absences as there is on presence. And I think it's all about the positioning and nuancing of how you might approach that review. So personally, as one of the guests at the editorial board, I'd be happy to consider something that speaks forcefully to absences, because I think that this is one of the mechanisms that we're trying to counteract with this special issue. So please do consider that. And if you have any insights or any questions about that, I'd be happy to follow up at any point, because that's a really interesting example. So with that, that's a really high level overview. I wanted to be as quick as possible running through these things so we have plenty of time for Q&A, and just to make sure that if you have any ideas, if you want to kind of engage with us, I'd be more than happy to do so. And with that, I will hand it over.
Thank you so much, Terry. This is great. So I'm Christy Stillwell. I'm the co-editor-in-chief at HPJ, and I'm going to give you the very quick overview about how to submit to the journal. So the first step, if you're not already signed up with OJS, which is the online journal system that we use, is just to send us a quick email, hpj@dal.ca, so literally hpj@dal.ca, and we'll get you registered, and you'll get an email and a login. And from there, once you log in, you just click on that very small, tiny writing that says new submission, and it will guide you through 5 steps. First is just inputting basic information, so author information, title of your submission, and pasting in your abstract. It will then ask you to upload the file, so the Word document or PDF that is your submission. It'll take you to a 3rd tab that should ask for some kind of supplementary documents if that's necessary. In that section, you might want to put some appendices or even use that section to upload your letter to the editor. You can do it in that section, or you can do it in the notes section on the first panel. It's up to you, wherever works best. From there, it'll just ask you to confirm a few things and then just submit, and it shows up in our inbox. So it's not too complicated. But with that, of course, we're always happy to answer questions related to uploading submissions because, you know, sometimes systems aren't perfect. So yeah, so again, just email us with registering, and if anything comes up with the submission, we get an automatic kind of prompt on our end. So you're welcome to double check and make sure that we've received it. And you can also track your submission through that portal as well. So you'll know when it's received and when it's been assigned to an editor, and then when it's gone out for review. And you'll also receive emails with feedback from your reviewers as well. So that's pretty much how to do that. And then I guess that brings us to the end of this very action-packed, informative little section. We're really excited that we have over the summer planned a few other kind of support sessions as people begin to get their submissions together. So a little bit more curated and detailed sessions about academic writing, or preparing an infographic, or preparing a creative session. And we'll get experts and members of our guest editorial board to host those. So we'll send out the dates and keep everyone, you know, up to date and noted about when those will happen over July and August, and maybe even into September. Yeah, so let's open it up for questions and discussions around this special issue.
So there's 2 ways that you can kind of engage with questions. You can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or you can type your question into the chat. So are there any questions out there so far? Okay, answer that.
Yeah.
Christy, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how we kind of promote the published articles.
Oh, yes. So we have an exciting way of promoting our issues once they're out. We do have a pretty decent social media presence and a communications officer, which will make sure that your article is spread out on our social media. Of course, you're welcome to share as well. We also host an author spotlight webinar where we invite authors from the issue to give an overview of their work and answer questions from an engaged audience. And I was also going to mention that the way that we work, because it is open access, all authors retain full copyright to the work, so they're welcome to share it as far and wide as possible.
I see in the chat, Bridget, if I may, asked, do personal experiences count? And the answer is absolutely, right? So one of the really wonderful things about this particular journal, in my experience, I'm obviously not part of the regular editorial board, but I have submitted here before, but crucially, thinking about the International Black Health Conference and the kind of orientation of this kind of work, is that personal experiences are actually vital to it. And so the question is, in what form would you like to recount your personal experiences? So you could recount your experiences within the context of a commentary. You could also recount those from the perspective of story work, because storytelling is really important to Black traditions of health and well-being, as well as Black studies generally. You could, of course, recount personal experiences through artwork and present this visually. And also, this is something that, you know, often isn't necessarily thought about, but is important actually as an academic kind of output. You could recount your personal experiences through academic articles. So you could use the form autoethnography, perhaps, to speak to particular issues, insights, perspectives that you have. So it's really just about what way you would like to engage, and whatever works for you. We're happy to work with you to see what you can produce. Hope that helps to answer the question. I see, Christine, you have your hand up also.
Thank you for organizing this wonderful opportunity. I have a couple of questions about the sort of more traditional empirical article submission. The one is just around sort of how tightly construed, I guess, the theme is. So improving Black health outcomes. Is the editorial team sort of envisioning that the papers themselves have to directly address a Black health outcome in the form of some kind of, like intervention or assessment that way? Or is it enough for the sort of implications of the study to kind of speak to issues around improving Black health outcomes, even if the paper itself isn't, like a direct intervention or something like this?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a great one. I'm happy to answer, but I also want to offer other folks on the editorial board an opportunity to answer if they so choose. But I'll just be quiet for a moment. I don't want to overspeak here.
I think the focus really is around us really sharing some of the health outcomes, and I think of that very broadly. And so I think it's really important for us to have a diverse selection of articles that allows us to be critical of what might be lacking with respect to Black healthcare and Black health outcomes in general. So I think, the opportunity is there for the article to be submitted as long as it really centers the Black health experience. Tari, you may, or Chelsea, or Keisha may have other ideas as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to pop in. I think it's really a matter of framing, right? So I think that the article, it may not necessarily be like, here is a direct intervention that has produced XYZ outcomes for people of African descent or people of African heritage, but it does need to center people of African descent and people of African heritage, right? Like so I think it's a matter of framing, right? Like if there's a tangential link, I'm not so certain that makes sense or fits, just because what the focus here is really trying to amplify the kind of engagement and perspective of folks working on Black health. So it's really just about that. But if the framing works in the sense of talking about, well, here are particular things that are particular salience to people of African heritage and have other implications for other communities, and here's how this particular issue works, and I could totally see a place for this fitting here. So it's really, I'd be happy to chat more, because I'm kind of being a bit vague. We
Sure.
need to kind of get into the specifics of what's there, but I hope that's helpful.
Yep, sure. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One thing. The looking at can you just speak a bit more on what the commentaries, what that type of writing would look like?
Tari, commentary. That's right.
Commentaries, yeah. So I'm not really one for kind of distant and dispassionate academic writing anyway, but I recognize that particularly as it relates to work on health and kind of traditional forms, academic writing tends to be relatively dispassionate, right? It doesn't tend to be normative. It doesn't tend to say this is what ought to happen. It kind of is a little bit separate, a little bit removed. Again, I'm not a fan of objectivity or that kind of language or discourse, but you kind of get what I'm tilting at, I hope, in terms of what I'm describing. Commentaries are not like that. Commentaries tend to be really direct and advocate specifically for something. So if you've ever read in a newspaper kind of opinion piece, it's like a good version of that, right? So so often they're not very good, but it's a good version of that, i.e. it's a structured essay that advocates for a particular position using evidence, yes, but is really kind of specifically oriented around an action that someone ought to take. That would be my position. And so, you know, commentaries can really run the gamut in different spaces, right? So you could talk about the way that the discipline that you're working in needs to behave. You could talk about what the government might need to do. You could talk, you know, you can really kind of be as creative as you want to be. But I think that the real specific important aspect of the commentary is that there has to be a call for action. Someone has to be able to do something as a result of the thing that you're writing. And so it might be government needs to invest more in Black health, right? Like that's a call to action. So you can write an essay and deliver that call to action within that context. But again, happy to work with you on the specifics and also take you through examples. I hope that answered the question.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Any other questions? We have lots of time.
There's a comment from Haley that kindly is offering to, once we have the information about the details about the drop-in sessions to support submissions over the summer, we're going to disseminate that information, and thank you, Haley. We're going to send that to you so you can share it through the break network.
Thank you, Haley.
Oh, can I also ask about the, I guess the timeline? Looking at, thought I saw something looking at October maybe, but
Yeah.
it's an info on the timeline.
Do you want to talk a lot more details on that? Was it October? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's the break.
Early October. Submissions are due October the 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and at that point, once we receive them, they'll be disseminated to reviewers. And we try to give a good timeline in terms of getting back.
For special issues where we're organized, like we would expect to have reviews back to you within a month or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then from there you would have another probably 3 or 4 weeks to consider those reviewers' comments and revise and respond as necessary, and then get things squared up as quickly as possible through the fall term.
The actual edition would be published
In the spring of
in
20.
the year.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then, yes, after things are accepted, they'll go to copy editing, they'll go to layout, and authors have full approval over each of those processes as well, so. And because we're on a strict timeline, I'm just saying it now, we're not putting any extensions on that. October 8th is the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll do lots of reminder calls leading up to that.
Yeah, we're trying to amplify all of us in our disparate social medias, as well as the actual HPJ social media team and also HPI. We're trying to amplify this to make sure that we'll have plenty of opportunities. Twitter is my kind of mode du jour, so you'll see me retweet. It'll be annoying, but it'll be there.
Any other questions? Comments? Maybe you just need time to think. Will our names be anonymous or actually in the document? Initially, when you submit anonymously. Obviously, that information, well, that doesn't make sense. So you submit your article. The guest editorial board will know who that is, but the reviewers will not. So all the articles to be reviewed will be sent to the reviewers. That's why we call it a blind kind of review. And then when it's published, however, your name will be attached to the publication. Does that answer your question, Ms. Bridget?
Yes, thanks for the clarification.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Watson.
And just to follow up on that, you know, especially in kind of submissions that seem a little bit more personal, if you are telling like personal stories or things like that, that can be a little daunting. But what I can say with this journal is that folks take a lot of care, not only with the kind of like anonymization, I know how to spell it, but saying it is hard, but also crucially, folks do take a lot of care in terms of the kind of quality of reviews that come back. Everyone's really constructive and really supportive. And so, yeah, I personally have found it to be a really good process. And I hope that, you know, our guest editorial board can kind of continue that tradition that's been established.
Also mentioned too, just for, you know, information sharing, that we will be seeking out individuals to do peer reviews. So if that is something that you're interested in doing, you could always reach out to HPJ and well, to have some conversations with staff or Christy or Julia, and of course us. Seeing no other questions, we can give you 25 minutes back in your day. We thank you again for joining us. Again, if you need to reach out, hpj@dow.ca, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks so much.
And yeah, I will be sending the recording and the slides for the people that registered, and yeah, more information. Stay tuned for the drop-in sessions over the summer. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, Carrie.